Yes.
It's funny because he's literally watching a bodybuilder's channel talking about bodybuilding. It's really
Eh.
dumb.
Okay, then you have the nutritional yeast.
Hey, what's up, dude?
It's a weak point, but don't worry, these points get weaker.
Hello.
Right arm first, hello?
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. What's up?
Not much. I had a question about I think yesterday you were talking about how it doesn't necessarily need to be a beginning of things.
Yeah.
Um, well, if you like, I get that it's logically possible, but I don't. But isn't the fact that it's like I don't know, I guess physically not possible evidence that there was a beginning?
What's not physically possible?
An infinite regress.
I don't know why I'd assume it's not physically possible.
Well, um, okay, like for example, with like the dominoes hypothetical, where like a domino needs another domino to fall over. If we can see that like a domino has fallen over, does that mean that there was a beginning?
No.
Why not?
I don't know why it would be assumed. Like, can you give me a reason why it would be assumed?
Because it happened. Like there appears to be an end, right?
Okay,
If a
there
domino
could be an
requires
end
another
to
domino to
something. It
fall
doesn't
over,
mean there's necessarily a beginning to something. You could just have an infinite regress.
but how is that? How would that be physically possible?
Well, I'm sure somebody who has like better math skills could probably explain it to you better, but I don't see why you'd expect time to work the same way um that you perceive it, or say the beginning of the universe. If it had a beginning, time would work the same way. You could have an infinite regress.
But doesn't an infinite regress um wouldn't that mean that like whatever like the initial like for example in the dominoes example, wouldn't that mean that like no dominoes could fall over because they're just
No,
infinitely
it doesn't mean no dominoes could fall over. So like again, if you were to count back from the amount of dominoes that have fallen, that would just be infinite.
but by virtue of it being infinite, it would never end. So there
That's
wouldn't
right.
be a
You
beginning.
you you could count back infinitely.
But then there wouldn't be a beginning, right?
No, it would be an infinite regress.
But if there's no beginning, then how did the domino fall over?
Well, it's an infinite regress. So things have moved from an infinite regress.
Okay, I don't really totally understand that. Like, if it goes back infinitely, then like there is no beginning inside, right? Because it just goes on.
Yeah, it
Like
would just
infinite
go
is
on
by virtue,
infinitely. So there'd be an infinite amount of dominoes that caused the other domino to fall.
right? But then, well, that means that there isn't a finite start, right? But if you see the domino falling over,
Right, so
then
there was no beginning that you could ever reach. It's an infinite regress.
but if there was no beginning, then how did the domino fall over?
Well, it's an infinite regress. There was a domino before the domino, before the domino, before the domino.
Right, right. But that would suggest that, or in the sniper example, right? If like to take a shot, you need your supervisor's
Yeah,
permission.
it's
You
the
need to
exact
like
same analogy.
right. But in an infinite regress situation, there would no like the shot would never be able to be taken, right? Because you just go back infinitely.
No, that's not true. So you can count back from the time the gun was fired and look at the chain
Mhm.
of command, and the chain of command would just be infinite. So
Well,
you're
by virtue of
basically
it being infinite,
asking
there's no.
you're asking a chicken or the egg kind of question. Was so that you could either count forward or count backwards. So if you were to count forward and somebody needs uh somebody needs permission from their superior to,
Mhm.
say to allow for the shot, and then somebody needs permission from their superior. If you count forwards infinitely, then yeah, the shot would never be fired. If you count backwards, then no, the shot could be fired.
How does the direction in which you count change that possibility?
Because if you count infinitely forward, the shot can never be fired because somebody would have to give permission to their underling over and over and
Right,
over again for the shot to be fired. If
right.
you count backwards, then the shot could be fired because eventually that permission would be granted. So you could count
Well,
backwards from the point in which the shot was granted permission, and if you go backwards, you'll just get an infinite regression.
so it sounds like you're saying the property of infinite um, changes depending on which direction you're counting.
Yeah, at least in the sniper analogy.
But so, like, why would the property of infinite change depending on the direction you're counting in? Wouldn't the property of being infinite stay the same regardless of which way you're counting?
Yeah, but this we're talking about specifically about the analogy.
Right.
So, like, again,
So like,
depending on how you word the analogy, if somebody is going to give permission to an underling infinitely to take a shot, the
then
shot will
shot
never
would be fired.
happen. If we're
Right.
counting backwards from when permission was granted, then you could have an infinite regression, and the shot could be fired.
See, I don't see how you could, like, if you count forward, it wouldn't be fired. So then it seems to me that
It
if you were
just
to count
depends on
backwards,
how
that would
you
just
look at
mean
it like, again, it depends on how you look at the hypothetical.
in terms of like the direction counting it.
Basically, so you could either count backwards from when permission was granted to fire the shot, and if we're assuming the shot was fired and
Hmm.
permission had to be granted infinitely backwards, you
Hmm.
could logically get an infinite regression. That is possible.
Right. Yeah, I understand that
If
logically.
if if you're the sniper and you're awaiting for permission, and the person giving permission has to get permission infinitely from. Maybe I'm wording this wrong. So, yeah. So
It
if
seems like the property of infinite should stay the same, right? Like if the shot would never be fired if you have to wait, then it
yeah, I
appears to
think
be
I'm
that if
explain.
you
Okay,
have to
wait,
wait.
wait. I think I might have made a mistake explaining this.
Okay.
So, if we were to use a natural number, uh,
Right.
so count from a natural number, so like from 0 to any number, we
Uh-huh.
could go on infinitely.
Right.
So the sniper asks for permission to shoot. The
Hmm.
person he asks for permission to shoot grants him permission, but that person needed permission from their superior, and that
Hmm.
person needed permission from their superior, and that person needed permission from their superior. You could just count infinitely, and that would not be logically impossible.
Right. It wouldn't be logically impossible, but it seems to be like physically impossible.
I don't know why you'd assume that. Like, I
Well,
don't.
because like
Yeah. So
the
for
fact that
something
like
for
the shot was fired seems to imply that permission was given somewhere along the line, right? which
Yeah,
means
but
like
I don't know why
it
it would
has
be
to be considered
assumed.
a
I
solid.
don't know why it would
See,
be assumed that's physically impossible. Like, is it? Would you say infinity is physically impossible?
um, yeah,
How would
I
infinity
mean,
be
I
physically
don't,
impossible?
um, I don't. Well, is there an example of physical? Is there a physical like manifestation of infinity?
I don't know. You're the one making the claim that infinity is not physically possible. So, like, do you have any evidence that infinity is not physically possible?
Well, I just can't seem to wrap my head around like like
Yeah.
something
So,
infinite existing.
so
Like
here
that's
here's
when
the
all of
thing.
this.
You might want to talk to Dr. Avi about this. Maybe he might have an answer for you, but you'd probably want to find somebody who's like an extremely high level mathematician for something like this to maybe explain,
Yeah.
it, or a physicist who could maybe like talk to you about whether or not infinity is physically possible and stuff like that. Because if you're going to start talking about whether or not something like that's physically possible, you're probably going to want to talk to somebody who actually deals with things like how time works, and can like mathematically
Right.
explain it or something.
Well, I mean, time is not really a physical concept, right?
Time
Well, it's a
exists.
concept. It's not like
No, time exists. Like again, you can mathematically prove time.
yeah, but as a concept, right? Like math is a concept.
No, math isn't a
It,
concept.
it doesn't exist objectively.
No, math exists objectively. Math is something that is really discovered.
Right. Well, it's a way of understanding things, right?
I mean, you could consider math as a language, but
Yeah.
the language of math is objective. Like whether or not we exist, 1 plus 1 would equal 2.
Well, yeah, but it starts from like a basic set of like axiomatic principles, right? That you need to accept in order to move forward.
Well, no, I don't see how that would be the case.
Like it's sort of like the laws of logic, right? Like
Well, no,
they
you would
well,
just
in terms
well,
of like being a mind, like I don't see how math would exist independent of a mind.
well, math would exist independent of a mind. It's just that in order to conceptualize it, a mind would need to exist.
Right. But it's a concept.
No, I wouldn't say
Right.
it's a concept.
What would you say it is?
Well, I I wouldn't say it's a concept. It's something that is that it seems like it was more discovered
Yeah.
than invented.
Well, I don't know. Well, it sounds like a way of like it's almost like a language, right? Or like it's a way of like communicating
Sort of. It's kind of like a language
ideas.
that's used to describe reality.
Yeah. So by virtue of that, that's why I say it's like a concept.
Okay, well, I don't know if I can really add anything more to this.
Okay, that's right. Oh, you also you said some things about steroids that aren't necessarily correct. They're kind of like small things, but so they're not that important. But one thing you said is you can't use insulin syringes to inject
You can't use
um
what?
insulin syringes to inject steroids.
I don't think you can, at least not well, because you're like the suspension fluid is oil. So
Yeah,
with an
but
insulin,
depending on the viscosity of the oil and the gauge of the insulin needle, like you can
well,
definitely draw.
insulin needles are all the same gauges, aren't they?
No, they range in gauges,
Okay, I'm not
anything from like
sure.
25 to like 31.
I
Um,
don't know if yeah, I don't know if I'd use an insulin syringe for steroids.
well, you might have it might take a long time to draw up, but It's definitely possible. But and the other thing is, you can tell if someone's on steroids through blood work based on their lipid panel. Like steroids have a very unique way of
No, you can't. You can
like,
maybe have evidence of that, but you
well, yeah,
can't.
it wouldn't be definitive proof, but
Well, yeah,
if
they'd
you see
have low
someone's blood work,
HDL. If they have like bizarrely low
yeah,
HDL,
and
that
really
is
high
a sign.
LDL, yeah. And one last thing, you said the other day that you wouldn't consider clenbuterol, like someone who uses clenbuterol, natural.
Yeah.
Why not?
So it does have performance enhancing benefits. It does help grow more muscle.
But so do a lot of
It's not just a stimulant.
right, but so do other things, right? Like caffeine or creatine.
Well, no. Clenbuterol has a direct anabolic effect. Caffeine doesn't.
Okay, the creatine.
Like again, creatine doesn't have a direct anabolic effect, but clenbuterol does.
So you anything that has a direct anabolic effect, you would consider
Like
being
like it is somewhat arbitrary to call somebody natty or not. Like there's plenty of things
yeah.
that we eat that aren't natural, but we still consider them natty. Like there seems to be a strong enough anabolic effect from clenbuterol where it probably crosses the line of whether or not you're using a performance enhancing drug or not.
Okay.
At least for
So
me, anyway.
there's some like threshold of anabolic property after which you would
Yeah,
consider
I
that.
guess.
Okay, that's fair. All right, that's everything. Thanks
Okay.
for taking the time, chat.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
Take care.
Take care. I'm a math major. You don't know what you're talking about? Well, that's funny because I had sex with your mother and she told me that you're a dickhead. That's neither here nor there, is it?
Or as the cool